On April 20th, 2011, Sony's PlayStation Network suddenly went dark. At first, many gamers thought it was just another temporary outage. Maybe the servers were overloaded. Maybe maintenance had gone wrong. Maybe Sony would fix it in a few hours and everyone would go back to playing online like normal, but that did not happen. Instead, millions of PlayStation users around the world were locked out of the service for days. Then days turned into weeks. And soon, the truth became much more frightening than a normal server problem. Sony had been hacked. Personal information from tens of millions of accounts had been exposed. Names, addresses, emails, passwords, birth dates, and possibly payment details were all at risk. For almost a month, PlayStation users lived with the fear that their private data could be used for identity theft or fraud. By the time the disaster was over, Sony had lost millions of dollars, faced lawsuits, dealt with government investigations, and became the center of one of the biggest cybersecurity scandals in gaming history. But to understand how all of this happened, we have to go back before the PlayStation Network attack. We have to talk about a young hacker named GeoHot, better known online as GeoHot. GeoHot was not an ordinary teenager. From a young age, he was fascinated by technology. He liked taking things apart, studying how they worked, and then finding ways to make them do things they were never designed to do. Remote controls, computers, electronics, nothing was safe from his curiosity. In 2007, Apple released the first iPhone, and it completely changed the mobile phone industry. But there was one major problem. In the United States, the iPhone was locked to AT&T. That meant if you wanted to use Apple's new revolutionary phone, you had to use AT&T as your carrier. GeoHot did not like that. He wanted the iPhone, but he did not want to give up his existing phone plan. So instead of accepting Apple's rules, he decided to break through them. At just 17 years old, GeoHot opened up the iPhone, studied its hardware, and figured out how to unlock it. Using a mix of hardware work, code, and pure determination, he made the iPhone work on other carriers. Then he posted his achievement online. The tech world exploded. Some people saw him as a genius. Others saw him as a troublemaker. But one thing was clear: GeoHot had become famous. He had defeated one of the most advanced consumer devices in the world, and he had done it as a teenager from New Jersey. For the hacker and homebrew communities, GeoHot became a symbol of freedom. He represented the idea that once you buy a device, you should be allowed to explore it, modify it, and use it however you want. For big companies, however, people like GeoHot were dangerous, because if one person could break into a locked system, others could follow. And if enough people followed, companies could lose control over their own products. After the iPhone, GeoHot continued experimenting with technology. He worked with Google for a while, but the structured corporate world did not seem to fit him. Eventually, he moved back home and announced that he was done hacking phones. But his retirement did not last long. One day, he received a challenge: hack the PlayStation 3. At the time, the PlayStation 3 was one of the most secure gaming consoles ever created. Microsoft's Xbox 360 and Nintendo's Wii had already been hacked in different ways, but the PS3 had remained mostly untouched. For hackers and homebrew developers, the PS3 was a locked treasure chest. It had powerful hardware, but Sony controlled what users could do with it. GeoHot saw that as a challenge. In 2010, he announced that he was going to hack the PS3. After weeks of work, he finally succeeded. He found a way into the system and proudly announced online, "I have hacked the PS3." This was a huge moment. For homebrew developers, it meant the PS3 could potentially run custom software and operate more like a personal computer. For Sony, it was a nightmare. If the console could be hacked, then people might also use that access to pirate games. Sony responded quickly. The company released a system update that removed the Other OS feature, which had allowed users to install Linux on the PS3. Sony argued that the update was necessary for security, but many users were furious. People had bought the console with that feature included. Now, Sony was removing it through an update. To many gamers and hackers, this felt like a betrayal. GeoHot was not finished. In January 2011, he found another way into the PS3. This time, he revealed important security keys that allowed people to bypass Sony's restrictions. But he also claimed that he did not support piracy. He even tried to design his release in a way that would not help people play pirated games. In his view, the goal was not theft. The goal was freedom. Sony did not care. On January 11, 2011, Sony sued GeoHot and others involved in the PS3 hacking scene. The company accused them of violating computer laws and helping enable copyright infringement. To Sony, this was about protecting their system, their games, and their business. To GeoHot and his supporters, it was about consumer rights. If someone buys a device, should they have the right to modify it? Or does the company still control the product after it leaves the store? The lawsuit turned GeoHot into a major internet figure. He appeared in interviews. He joked about the situation. He even released a rap video mocking Sony and presenting himself as a defender of freedom. But Sony was not playing around. The company obtained a restraining order against him. GeoHot was ordered not to hack the PS3 or publish more information about the exploit. Sony also went after records from major online platforms, including information about people who had visited his content or downloaded files. This move shocked many people. To critics, Sony was going too far. It was not just targeting one hacker anymore. It seemed to be looking at everyone connected to the case: viewers, supporters, donors, and members of the wider hacking community. And that is when Anonymous entered the story. Anonymous was a decentralized online hacking collective known for targeting companies, governments, and organizations they believed had abused power. They had no clear leader, no official membership list, and no single structure. Anyone could act under the Anonymous name. When Anonymous saw Sony's actions against GeoHot, they viewed it as an attack on internet freedom. They issued a warning to Sony. Soon after, Sony's websites were targeted. Sony.com and PlayStation.com were hit with attacks that disrupted service. Anonymous claimed responsibility for some actions and demanded that Sony leave GeoHot and other hackers alone. But GeoHot did not want this kind of help. He knew that Anonymous could make the situation worse. Unlike him, Anonymous operated in the shadows. GeoHot had put his name and face out publicly. Anonymous was unpredictable, and anyone could claim to act in its name. Some people connected to Anonymous even began doxing Sony executives and posting personal information online. Others called for real-world protests at Sony stores. The situation was spiraling. On April 11, 2011, GeoHot reached a settlement with Sony. He agreed not to hack Sony products again. Legally, his fight with Sony was over. On April 20th, Sony shut down the PlayStation Network. At first, the company did not explain the full situation. It simply told users that some PlayStation Network functions were down and that more information would come later. But people quickly became suspicious. The network stayed offline. Gamers became angry. Rumors spread across forums, YouTube, and gaming websites. Many people immediately wondered if Anonymous was involved. On April 22nd, Sony finally admitted that there had been an external intrusion. But the company still did not immediately reveal the full possible danger to customer data. After 23 days offline, the PlayStation Network slowly began coming back online in May 2011. Sony restored service region by region. To apologize, the company offered users free games, free PlayStation Plus time, and identity theft protection in some regions. But for many customers, the trust had already been damaged. The outage became one of the most infamous moments in gaming history. It showed how vulnerable even massive technology companies could be. It also raised important questions about digital ownership, consumer rights, hacking, cybersecurity, and corporate responsibility. GeoHot had started by challenging Sony's control over the PS3. Sony responded with legal force. Anonymous responded with threats and attacks. Then the PlayStation Network suffered one of the largest data breaches of its era. In the end, everyone paid a price. GeoHot was forced to settle and step away from Sony hacking. Anonymous attracted more attention from law enforcement. Sony lost money, trust, and reputation. And millions of users were reminded that their private information was only as safe as the companies storing it. But perhaps the most surprising part is what happened after. Despite the scandal, Sony recovered. The PlayStation Network grew. More users joined. The PlayStation brand continued to dominate the gaming industry. For many people, the 2011 PSN hack became just another chapter in gaming history. But its impact was much bigger than that. It changed how companies thought about cybersecurity. It changed how customers viewed online accounts. And it proved that in the modern digital world, the battle between corporations, hackers, and consumers can become bigger than any single game console. The PlayStation Network hack was not just a gaming outage. It was a warning that when companies collect personal data, they have a responsibility to protect it. A warning that angry online communities can become powerful and unpredictable. And a warning that in a world connected by accounts, passwords, servers, and payment systems, one breach can affect millions of lives. Sony wanted to control its console. Hackers wanted to control the devices they owned. But in the middle of that fight, ordinary PlayStation users became the ones who suffered most. And that is why the PlayStation Network hack remains one of the most important cybersecurity disasters in gaming history. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more true stories about technology, hacking, gaming, and internet history. Also, comment below and let us know. Do you think Sony handled the PlayStation Network hack the right way?